From the glistening domes of St. Basil's Cathedral to the grand halls of the Winter Palace, Russia's history is a story of epic proportions, a sweeping saga of empires, revolutions, and resilience. It's a tale that stretches across 11 time zones, touching both Europe and Asia, shaped by powerful leaders, brilliant artists, and the unwavering spirit of its people. So, where does this monumental story begin? Let us travel back more than 1,000 years to uncover the origins of this vast and complex nation. Our journey starts in the 9th century, a time when Slavic tribes dotted the vast plains of Eastern Europe. The land was rich, but the people were divided. According to ancient chronicles, these tribes, weary of internal conflict, decided to seek a ruler from across the sea. In 862, they invited Varangian chieftains, Vikings from Scandinavia, to bring order to their lands. A leader named Rurik accepted the call, establishing his rule in the city of Novgorod. This moment is traditionally seen as the birth of the Rus state, the very first seed of what would grow into modern Russia. Rurik's successor, Oleg, moved the capital south to the strategic city of Kiev, situated on the Dnieper River. This new state, Kievan Rus, flourished. It became a powerful and prosperous center of trade, connecting Scandinavia with the Byzantine Empire. A pivotal moment came in 988, when Prince Vladimir the Great, seeking to unify his people under a single faith, adopted Orthodox Christianity from Byzantium. This decision would profoundly shape Russian culture, art, and identity for centuries to come, forging a deep spiritual connection that endures to this day. However, the golden age of Kievan Rus was not to last. Internal squabbles among princes weakened the state, leaving it vulnerable to outside threats. In the 13th century, a storm from the east descended upon the Rus lands, the Mongol Golden Horde. For nearly 250 years, the Russian principalities were under Mongol dominion, forced to pay tribute and accept the authority of the Khan. While this period was one of hardship and stagnation, it also had an unintended consequence. It shifted the center of power. As Kiev declined, a small, previously insignificant town began its steady ascent, Moscow. Moscow's princes proved to be shrewd and patient leaders. They cleverly navigated the complex politics of the Golden Horde, gradually collecting land and influence. They positioned themselves as the gatherers of the Russian lands. The tide began to turn in 1380 at the Battle of Kulikovo, where Prince Dmitry Donskoy led a united Russian army to a major victory over the Mongols, a symbolic triumph that boosted national morale. A century later, in 1480, Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great, stood his ground against the horde and effectively ended Mongol rule. He centralized power, expanded Moscow's territory, and laid the groundwork for a unified Russian state. The consolidation of power reached its zenith under his grandson, Ivan IV, a figure whose name echoes through history, Ivan the Terrible. In 1547, he was crowned not as a grand prince, but as the first Tsar of all the Russias, a title that claimed an imperial legacy tracing back to the Caesars of Rome. Ivan's reign was a study in contrasts. He reformed the army, commissioned the stunning St. Basil's Cathedral, and significantly expanded Russia's borders, conquering the Khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan and pushing into Siberia. But his rule was also marked by paranoia and brutal repression. His secret police, the Oprichnina, terrorized the nobility and common people alike, solidifying his fearsome reputation. After his death, Russia plunged into a period of chaos known as the Time of Troubles, a decade of civil war, famine, and foreign invasion. The crisis ended in 1613 with the election of Michael Romanov as the new Tsar, beginning a dynasty that would rule Russia for the next 300 years. The Romanov era ushered in a new chapter of transformation. The most dynamic of these rulers was Peter the Great, who took the throne at the end of the 17th century. A towering figure in both stature and ambition, Peter was determined to drag Russia out of its medieval past and into the modern world. He traveled across Western Europe, learning about shipbuilding, military techniques, and administration. Upon his return, he launched a whirlwind of reforms. He modernized the army and created Russia's first navy. He reformed the government, simplified the alphabet, and even ordered his nobles to shave their beards and adopt Western dress. His most ambitious project was the construction of a new capital, St. Petersburg, a window to the west built on a swamp. Through his victory in the Great Northern War against Sweden, Peter officially proclaimed the Russian Empire in 1721, cementing its status as a major European power. The 18th century saw Russia's cultural and territorial zenith under another powerful ruler, Catherine the Great. A German princess who came to power through a coup, Catherine embraced the ideas of the Enlightenment. Her reign is often considered Russia's golden age. She corresponded with philosophers like Voltaire, founded schools, and was a great patron of the arts, establishing the world-famous Hermitage Museum. She also continued Russia's expansion, annexing Crimea and large parts of Poland, pushing the empire's borders further south and west. Yet, for all the talk of enlightenment, the vast majority of the Russian population remained serfs, living in conditions close to slavery. This stark contrast between a glittering, Europeanized aristocracy and an impoverished peasantry would become a source of deep-seated tension. The 19th century was a period of immense contradiction. Russia defeated Napoleon's Grande Army in 1812, a patriotic triumph that inspired great works of art and literature from writers like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Yet, its rigid social structure and autocratic government lagged behind the industrializing West. Reforms, like the emancipation of the serfs in 1861 by Tsar Alexander II, were often too little, too late, and failed to solve the underlying social problems. As the 20th century dawned, the cracks in the Romanov Empire were widening into chasms. Russia's humiliating defeat in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905 triggered a revolution that forced Tsar Nicholas II to grant limited political freedoms. But the concessions were not enough. The immense strain of World War I proved to be the final breaking point. With millions of casualties at the front, and food shortages and chaos at home, the people's patience ran out. In February 1917, mass protests in Petrograd, as St. Petersburg was now called, led to the abdication of the Tsar, bringing 3 centuries of Romanov rule to an abrupt and dramatic end. A provisional government took over, but its authority was weak. In the shadows, a radical faction of socialists, the Bolsheviks, led by the brilliant and ruthless revolutionary Vladimir Lenin, were plotting their next move. In October 1917, they seized power in a swift coup, promising peace, land, and bread. The world's first communist state was born, but it came at the cost of a brutal civil war that tore the country apart. Following their victory in the Civil War, the Bolsheviks established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, in 1922. After Lenin's death in 1924, a power struggle ensued, from which Joseph Stalin emerged as the absolute dictator. Stalin launched a program of rapid industrialization and forced collectivization of agriculture. While the country modernized at a breakneck pace, the human cost was staggering. Millions perished from famine, forced labor in the Gulag camps, and political purges. When World War II erupted, the Soviet Union initially signed a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany, but in 1941, Hitler betrayed Stalin and invaded. The war on the Eastern Front was fought with unparalleled brutality and sacrifice. The Soviet people endured immense suffering but ultimately repelled the invasion, pushing the German army all the way back to Berlin. Their victory, which came at the cost of over 27 million Soviet lives, was decisive in the defeat of Nazism. But peace did not bring harmony. The post-war world quickly split into 2 blocks, with the capitalist West led by the United States and the communist East led by the USSR. The Cold War began, a decades-long standoff characterized by an arms race, proxy wars, and a pervasive climate of fear and suspicion. For over 40 years, the world lived under the shadow of the Cold War. The Soviet Union achieved remarkable scientific feats, like launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, and sending the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into space. It maintained a powerful military and exerted tight control over its satellite states in Eastern Europe. However, by the 1980s, the Soviet system was creaking under the weight of economic stagnation and the immense cost of the arms race. In 1985, a new, younger leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, came to power. He introduced radical reforms, glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring, hoping to revitalize the communist system. But these reforms unleashed forces he could not control. Calls for democracy and national independence grew louder, both within the Soviet republics and across Eastern Europe. The symbolic fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 signaled the end was near. In August 1991, a failed coup by hardline communists against Gorbachev sealed the fate of the USSR. One by one, the republics declared independence. On Christmas Day, 1991, the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. The Soviet Union was dissolved, and the Russian Federation emerged, with Boris Yeltsin as its first elected president. From the Viking princes of Kiev to the Tsars of Moscow, from the emperors of St. Petersburg to the commissars of the Kremlin, Russia's history is a relentless cycle of collapse and renewal, of turmoil and triumph. It's the story of a nation forged in the crucible of conflict, defined by its vastness, and enriched by a culture of profound depth and soul. This incredible journey through time shows us a country constantly reinventing itself while carrying the weight of its powerful, and often painful, legacy. The story of Russia is far from over, and understanding its past is key to understanding its present and its future. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found this history as fascinating as I do, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world.